Sabres and Kings. Tonight, we'll preview it coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including our YouTube channel where you can watch the show. Just search Locked On Sabres when you get to YouTube and you'll find us right there. Joe DiBiase, we've got a matchup against the LA Kings to preview for Tuesday night's game at KeyBank Center before the Sabres head out west for a couple of games on the West Coast, including in Colorado, in Vegas, and in Arizona. But tonight, we have the LA Kings. We'll go to our YouTube channel, though, for a comment of the show. And this one is courtesy of CJ, who says, Middlestat bums me out. I thought he was going to become an offensive threat for the Sabres. He probably will once he is traded. I would not anticipate that Middlestat would go elsewhere and become great if it's not going to happen here. Don Granato is giving Casey Middlestat every single opportunity to produce on this team, and it is not really happening. So what's going to happen on another team? Unless, some Evan Rodriguez situation comes to play and he gets paired with Sidney Crosby, or he gets paired with Connor McDavid or Nathan McKinnon. Short of that, I don't think we're going to see much more from Casey Middlestat wherever he may go on his next stop, if he does have another stop, which, you play in the NHL long enough and you'll have one. So anyways, thank you for the comment, though, and the question. Let's preview tonight's game against the LA Kings, and we could start with Casey Middlestat because, once again, this is confirmed after Monday's skate was looking this way, Tuesdays as well. Casey Middlestat is going to skate on the top line once again with Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch. Middlestat on the left wing, Tuch on the right, and Thompson at center. And that line was not bad in the first game that they had together. I thought Thompson and Tuch did a lot of the heavy lifting. Middlestat, a couple of turnovers, didn't look all that comfortable on the wall playing at that position. I don't love him on that line. I think Krebs, as I said on yesterday's show, is a better fit for Tage Thompson and Alex Tuch. But Granato is exhausting all options to see if he can get anything out of Casey Middlestat before writing him off. So that's the top line for Tuesday night's game. Second line, the kid line, the Legion of Zoom, Dylan Cousins, Jack Quinn, and J.J. Peterka. Third line, Tyson Jost at center with Victor Olofsson and Rasmus Asplund, Peyton Krebs on the checking line, centering Zemgus Girgensons and Kyle Okposo. And then your blue line, Matthias Samuelsson and Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power and Jacob Bryson. And a second game in a row for Cal Clegg. Ilya Lyubushkin out, obviously, as is Henry Jokiharju. And it is Cal Clegg who will be in over Lawrence Pilot, which, you know what? Fine. Pilot has not been that great in his return to Buffalo. I don't think he's been bad by any stretch of the imagination. Clegg's been a little bit of a pleasant surprise as a Sabre this year. He hasn't done anything terrific. Played a lot of minutes Owen Power earlier in the season and just gives them a little bit of depth, I guess. So that's the Sabres lineup for the game. And it'll be Middlestat on the number one power play unit again, unless Don Granato makes a last-minute change. And we'll see how that goes. I actually asked Don Granato on WGR on Tuesday morning his thoughts about Pittsburgh taking away Tage Thompson on the power play, following him on that left flank to take away that one-timer. And Granato expressed confidence that the other players, Dahlin, Cousins, and Tuch, their shots from the wall and from the point are going to force teams to kind of play back into the middle and not be able to cheat over to Tage Thompson's side. He actually made a specific reference to the first power play the Sabres had against Pittsburgh on Saturday night. Pittsburgh followed Thompson out to the faceoff circle, and Granato said that Dahlin, like he was coached to do in that situation, just shot down the middle where it was wide open because that Penguin was on the left occupied with Thompson. And Dahlin just walked down the middle and ripped a wrist shot, low blocker on Casey DeSmith and hit the goalpost. So the Sabres were that close to kind of, forcing the Penguins off their spot right away if Dahlin had finished that. And I think that's the right approach. I told you, I think Victor Olofsson makes sense as a one-timer on the right flank. But if he's not going to make that change, then the way to go is Dahlin's got to either just walk down the center of the ice and rip them and score some goals, or Cousins has to do that from the right side. But those two are the guys that are going to have to really play aggressive and shoot to score. Really walk down with aggression, no hesitation, and just rip them. And when they start scoring goals doing that, then I think that it'll free up Thompson just a little bit. That's the Sabres lineup for Tuesday night. We'll take a quick timeout, and when we come back, what's going on with the LA Kings, the Sabres opponent? First time they see them on the season. Was that right, actually? Let me double check that. They didn't have a matchup with the Kings earlier in the season, I don't think. No, February. February is when they go to LA. So yes, first meeting of the season against the LA Kings. What's going on with them? Where are they in the standings? Who are their leading goal scorers? What does their lineup look like for tonight's game? And a full Sabre that you've known to be on the LA Kings that is not currently on the LA Kings, kind of. And I'll tell you what happened there with that former Sabre when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. Later in today's episode, we'll do our betting preview for Tuesday night's game, and that will be brought to you by betonline.net. It's your number one source for sports betting information all season long. Every professional sport out there, every amateur league out there as well. Not every. I don't think you could probably bet on, my cousin's T-ball or anything like that. But from pro football to the college football bowl season, the NBA, the FIFA World Cup, they've got it all covered at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. They are the fastest and easiest way to get all your betting information. I've been saying this all year long. Use BetOnline for your fantasy lineup decisions in fantasy football. Look at the over-unders for yardage. Look at the spreads for touchdown scores, and use the lines to figure out what is the most likely outcome, and use that to your fantasy teams and for your fantasy lineup decisions. Head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. When you are done with us, be sure to make Locked On Sports Today your next listen. Great. You got the take of the day. You've got recaps from the night before, all the stuff you need from the top headlines in sports. Locked On Sports Today. All right, the LA Kings. First time the Sabres see the Kings all year long. You may remember I talked them up a lot last year. They were my Stanley Cup futures bet that I made midway through the year. I like to do that about the midpoint of every season, and they had very good advanced numbers. They just weren't getting the saves, and they weren't getting the shooting percentage. Their PDO was really low, which usually points to they were getting unlucky. But if you look at this game for the Kings and where they are after 31 games played, the Kings are having a better season in terms of results. They are tied for second place in the Pacific Division, 35 points. That is tied with Seattle, 6 points back of Vegas. So Vegas is running away with the Pacific a little bit. The Kings have 35 points. That is 5 points clear of a playoff spot. Colorado actually is out of the playoffs right now at 30. LA is at 35. Now, they do have a negative goal differential on the season at -6. So a little bit of a concern there. Their advanced numbers on the year, pretty darn good. Expected goals for percentage, 53.3% at 5-on-5. That is number 6 in the NHL. Really strong. Their shot share for Corsi percentage is 10th in the NHL at 51.96%. Now, the problem with the LA Kings is their power play and their special teams. Their special teams, their goaltending has really let them down this season. And if you look at their percentage on the year, they are at, where are we looking? They're outside the top 10 in terms of power play percentage. Just looking at this top list that only has the top 10 and they're not in it. But it's just another one of those weird seasons where they dominated 5-on-5 for possession. It might just come down to the Kings don't have great goal scorers. They'll get the opportunities and they just don't score a lot of goals. Now, what's new for the LA Kings? Kevin Fiala, acquired in the offseason from the Minnesota Wild. He is having a fabulous season. He is their number one point getter with over a point a game, 32 points in 31 games played, 9 goals and 23 assists on a fresh new contract, 26 years old. Great player. Anze Kopitar, mainstay on the Kings for a long, long time. He's getting up there, 35 years old, but still playing well. 27 points in 31 games played as their number one center, averaging exactly 20 minutes of ice time a night. And a lot of veteran production at the top of the lines for the Kings. Victor Arvidsson at 22 points in 29 games, including 8 goals. Philip Deneau with 20 points in 31 games played is what you're looking at for their blue line. Now, for their defense, still the Drew Doughty show, logging big minutes with 26-20 averaging per night, a huge number. Michael Anderson, 23 years old, averaging almost 22 minutes a night. A little bit of an up-and-comer in their group. Advanced numbers, I'd actually have to look at. I haven't seen him really, lighting up the scoreboard by any means. He's only got 7 points on the season, but he's logging big minutes, and he has been skating with Drew Doughty on that top pair. Fourth round pick of the Kings in 2017, 5 years ago. Kind of by default, he's been on their top pair. They don't have a very strong blue line. The rest of their blue line, Sean Dursey and Matt Roy, might even be Matt Wah, don't know, on their second pair. That's on me if it's Wah. Alex Edler, Sean Walker is their third pair. Yeah, Alex Edler still playing hockey in his career. How old is Alex Edler at this point? He is 36 years old. Would have guessed like he's 39. I mean, he played in that finals between the Canucks and the Bruins 10 years ago. But anyways, also, excuse me, Alex Iafello, local product, Eden, New York. He is back in the Kings lineup. He was dealing with an injury all year. He has now played 8 games on the season. He is back in their lineup. Played the other night, got an assist against the Blue Jackets. He has 7 points in 8 games played. So he's playing great this season, despite missing a bunch of it. Their lines for tonight, Anze Kopitar, Kevin Fiala, Arthur Kaliev on the top line, Philip Deneau, Trevor Moore, and Gabriel Velarde on the second line, Rasmus Kupari, Adrian Kempe, and Alex Iafello is the third pair. Kempe, by the way, I should bring up here. Kempe, I believe, has also been dealing with an injury. No, he is not. He's played all games, 31 games, 10 goals and 8 assists. Now, that is a little bit lower than what he was at last year. 35 goals scored last season, and he is well below that pace this year. But that was bound to happen, a little bit of shooting percentage regression for Kempe. So he's skating with Kupari and Alex Iafello, and then the fourth line, Blake Lizotte, Jarrett Anderson-Dolan, and Carl Grunstrom. Maybe some players you're learning about for the first time. But what about that former Sabre that I teased going into the break that is kind of on the Kings, but really not anymore? Cal Petersen. Remember Cal Petersen? Former Sabre goalie prospect, Notre Dame, left after 4 years of college. He went to the LA Kings. He became their starting goaltender as Jonathan Quick began to decline and signed a big contract. And he's only in year 1 of that big contract. And he's already been waived and sent to the minors. In fact, right now, Cal Petersen is with the Ontario Reign in California in the AHL. Cal Petersen, he has played 10 games this year, really poor numbers, an 868 save percentage, despite having a winning record of 5-3-2. Cal Petersen, how the mighty have fallen. And his contract, by the way, if you're wondering, he's in year 1 of it. It's a 3-year deal, is all, but $5 million per year. So right now, he's in the minors on a first of a 3-year contract at $5 million per year. He's got a modified no trade clause. He was waived and went unclaimed earlier in the season. So bad looking contract for the Kings right now. But they are still going with Jonathan Quick as their starting goaltender. 882 save percentage for Jonathan Quick, not playing much better. 8-8-3 in 20 starts. The Sabres will not see either one of them on Tuesday night. They will see Phoenix Copley for the Coyotes. Phoenix Copley, formerly of the Coyotes, I should say. not formerly of the Coyotes. I only did that because of his first name. Sorry, formerly of the Washington Capitals. Jesus. He played 26 games for the Capitals in the last 2 years. Got a start or two with the Blues earlier in his career. And 2 years ago, as Washington's backup, a 905 save percentage for Washington. Actually, that was a couple years ago. 2018-19 was down in the minors a couple years, returned to the NHL, and now he's back with the Kings. Only 2 games played this season. And he got 2 wins, 927 save percentage, so he's played well, but a backup goaltender is what the Sabres will be seeing on Tuesday. And I did not give you the Sabres starting goaltender earlier, and I should do that. The Sabres will be going with Craig Anderson. He was the first to leave the starter's net at practice, so it will likely be Craig Anderson between the pipes for the Sabres, who, by the way, will be wearing their black and reds, which means they cannot lose. Cannot lose. And I will tell you why when we come back as we go through our Bet Online betting preview. That is on the way next here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. Welcome back to the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. All right, it is time to look at some of the betting lines for Tuesday night's game between the Buffalo Sabres and the Los Angeles Kings. And some interesting lines, to say the least, in this game tonight. Neither team really is favored. If you want to give a slight edge to anybody, I guess you give it to the Kings, because what the lines look like at BetOnline is the Kings minus 106 to win the game outright, and the Buffalo Sabres to win the game at minus 104. So minus money. It's basically a pick'em game for Tuesday night at KeyBank Center. The over-under is at 6.5 with a little bit of juice on the over. Minus 132 is over 6.5. The under is plus 120. And on the puck line, you get the Kings minus a goal and a half at plus 220, while the Sabres are at minus 260 for plus 1 goal and a half. I would bet the Sabres in this game for no other reason than they are wearing their black and reds, and they cannot lose wearing black and reds. They are 2-0 in the black and red goat head this season. They have outscored their opponents 12-5 in those 2 games. There is just something about those jerseys. They put them on, and they become the 05-06 Sabres. Cannot lose wearing this tonight. But I will make a logical reason why I think the Sabres will win this game. They have been outplaying their opponents. This is a team that likes to control the game, and also, kind of like the Sabres, doesn't bury as many of their chances as they create. So they're a little bit good possession team, but they're a little bit older. The Kings are. A lot of guys at the top of the lineup that I mentioned are in their 30s, up 30s even. Doughty on the top pair in his 30s. Kopitar at 35. Deneau at 29. And I get it. Some of these guys aren't like, old ancients. Like 29 is not that old, but the Sabres are the youngest team in hockey and are one of the fastest teams in hockey. And I really think that the Kings are going to have trouble with their speed in this game. Now, a couple of prop bets that I like for tonight's game. So I would go with the Sabres on the money line. I wouldn't touch the puck line either way. Minus 104 for the Sabres. Over, under, I would go over 6.5 goals because you're getting a backup goaltender for the Kings, and you are getting Craig Anderson's been fine for the Sabres. You might even want to qualify him as their best goaltender right now, but not really saying a whole lot. In this game, I'm going to go back to the shots on goal and I'm going to go over 3.5 shots for Tage Thompson at minus 157. That has been a good bet to hit all year. Thompson over on shots. He has some games where he gets 8 or 9 shots. Either he gets to 3.5 by the end of a period. He had 5 goals the other night. So, he could hit that just on goals scored. But I like Tage Thompson over 3.5 points, or over 3.5 shots, I should say. And if I'm looking at points in this game, I like Dylan Cousins to record a point at minus 145. Point a game player throughout the year, playing on the top power play unit. And as I mentioned earlier, I wonder if the Kings are going to play Thompson like the Penguins did on the power play. And if that happens, then the guy that's going to benefit from that the most on the power play is going to be Dylan Cousins. It's going to open up Dylan Cousins' shooting lanes more than anybody. And I think, I've criticized his shot a little bit this year, but he has come around a little bit. I've come around a little bit on his goal scoring ability, and I think he's able to bury one on the power play. If not, also on one of the Sabres' best lines, that kid line, the Legion of Zoom. this year. So I got Cousins to record a point at minus 145. And that is going to do it today for the Locked On Sabres podcast. So enjoy the Goatheads, enjoy the Sabres and their home meeting with the LA Kings before they head out west. We get a little Sabres after dark action. So enjoy the game. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on Locked On Sabres. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Now go make your next listen Locked On Sports Today. From the top stories in sports, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.